Hi, good afternoon, everyone. You're very most welcome to the Access Bank Sustainability Awareness Week for 2021. And the theme of this year's session is Building Blocks for Sustainable Future. And today we shall be looking at a very exciting package in one of our sessions, and it's titled The Innovation. And today we have a very full house for you. We have great people in the house, and they're going to be discussing various areas of innovation as it regards sustainable development and environmental and social sustainability. And before we go right into it, we shall be having a goodwill message from the head of sustainability of Access Bank Group in the person of Mrs. Omobolale Victor Lania. Omobolale, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Banky. Good. Thank you, Bankole. Good morning. No, it's afternoon now, depending on where you are in the part of the world. And for some people, it will be good evening. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, the flagship webinar of the 2021 Access Bank Sustainability Awareness Week, themed Building Blocks for a Sustainable Future. We are glad that you found time to participate in this despite your very busy schedules, and we say thank you. We've had a very, very fantastic week so far. The event held at our building and live streamed on YouTube was very, very insightful, and we're certain that today's session will even be better. The programs for this week have been specially designed to address various thematic issues that border around advancing sustainability in Nigeria and Africa. We've discussed and we're still discussing issues around innovation, inclusion, sustainable finance, communications and impact, policy and action, and the need for multi-sectoral collaboration amongst a wide range of other issues. We've had so many intelligent, exciting, bright, young and old speakers join us to lead the conversations, to create the necessary awareness, and to champion the change that we all want to see. Today, we have very, very powerful speakers based both in Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. And I am very, very excited to have all of them join us. They are all people that I hold very dear to my heart. They are people that are very passionate, people that understand the topic very well, and they are in their own little ways doing things to ensure that together we create a sustainable future. So today they will be focusing on innovation as a building block for the sustainable future that we all desire to see. The world right now thrives on innovation and sustainability. And I'm not sure that sustainability is complete without innovation. So we look forward to a wonderful session that is engaging on the intersections between the topics. Once again, I welcome you all. We truly hope you're excited as we are to gain very many valuable insights. Thank you so much. God bless you. And I hand you over back to my ever capable Dr. Bankole Alibi. Bankole, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omobolale. Thank you very much. And it's just about to get started. Thank you very much. And the point line there actually is that there cannot be sustainability. There cannot be sustainable practices without innovation. Because in truth, if we have to make a better future, for the unborn generation. We need to design creative ways to ensuring that we are designing solutions that does not just fit our current generation, but to fit the upcoming, to fit into the future, and innovation all the way. So I'm going to start very quickly by introducing the great set of panelists that we have today, and I'm so excited. I don't know if you're excited as I am, but I'm so excited to have these young and very experienced and old people on this panel today to discuss the topic of innovation in sustainability. From the first up there, we have Mr. Uche Uchikebe of Africa Hacks. Is the Uche, do you want to quickly introduce yourself in 30 seconds thereabout, if you can? Thank you.
Yes, for sure. Thanks, Bankole. So I'm the founder of Africa Hacks, and Africa Hacks, we're focused on building platforms and solutions that ensure that youth of African descent and also youth in Africa have the resources to build startups from their ideas. So I'm really excited to be here because we've previously worked with Access Bank, and they are champions of sustainability. They supported a hackathon that we had alongside other partners. And actually from that hackathon, we've been able to transform ideas into actual companies in Nigeria. So I'm excited to share more about that as part of today's discussion.
Thank you very much, Uche. We're so glad to have you here, and we're looking forward to the exciting conversations today. Next, we're going to introduce Mr. Godson Ikibe. Mr. Godson Ikibe is the Manager Sustainability and Climate Change at PwC Nigeria. Godson, please.
Thank you, Bakulu, for introducing me. Yeah, thank you, the audience out there. Yeah, my name is Godson Ikebe. I'm manager of the Sustainability and the Climate Change Unit at PwC, where we offer organizations sustainability solutions and innovative solutions to address problems in society. So that's what we do, and that's what I've been doing for a couple of years. Thank you, and I look forward to an exciting session.
Thank you, Godson. Thank you very much. And then I move to my very own good friend, Mr. Emmanuel Etadehi. Mr. Emmanuel is actually the Senior Vice President at FMDQ and Executive Secretary for the Financial Center for Sustainable Finance in Lagos. Emmanuel, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bankole, and good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be in this meeting today. Access Bank are strong partners, and I see on the team here very strong friends and partners that have supported us. My name is Emmanuel Etadehi. As I've been introduced, I'm a climate change and sustainability champion in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. And as we go ahead, we're going to have a very quick quote from one of our panelists as well, Diwura Oladepo. She is the Executive Director for Tech for Dev. Diwura, if you want to introduce yourself in 10 seconds.
Okay, 10 seconds a bit short, but I'll try. Hi everyone, my name is Oladiwura Oladepo. I am a co-founder and executive director at Tech for Dev. So Tech for Dev is a non-profit organization, and what we basically do is we create access to decent work and entrepreneurship opportunities for Africans, and we do this through digital and technology skilling and advocacy. And I'm super excited to be here and contributing to this panel on innovation.
Thank you very much, Diwura. And last but not least on this panel, while we wait for our other speakers, we're going to get a quick introduction from Mr. Sasania Paul Olabumi. Oluwabumi, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you very much. You can call me Paul. It's easier, or you can say Shasha. Yeah, thank you very much again for inviting me. I'm Paul, and I work for an impact fund established by OPEC, and we finance infrastructure projects geared towards sustainability across several emerging markets. So I cover the West and Central Africa region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And as fellow audience, we're still waiting for some of our panelists to join us as they join us, which will be introducing themselves. But right now, we're going to jump into it. Just to let you know, I shall be co-hosting this event with my colleague, Rhoda Robinson, Executive Director at Hasey, and my name is Dr. Bankole Alibe. I'm a safeguard expert at the World Bank, and I'm also the Managing Director and Chief Executive at Transatlantic Development Limited. Quickly, we have one of our panelists on board as well. Her name is Pauline Abiola Oshene. Pauline, do you want to give a quick introduction before we jump right into it?
Yeah, sorry. Nigeria needs to get serious with the light situation, because that disconnection clearly says we don't have sustainable solutions for, Anyway, my name is Pauline Abiola Oshene. I'm originally Kenyan, but I work and live in Nigeria. I'm passionate about sustainability. I've done a lot of work, and proof of concepts have been there. We've been awarded severally. And the idea is to bring sustainability to the grassroots, because we could sit at this level and talk about things, but if the rest of the world doesn't know, then it's an exercise in futility. So our mission is to use the pillars of leadership, governance, strategic development to drive sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pauline. Thank you very much. So we're going to right into it. But before we go into that, I would want us to look into the concept of innovation as it affects sustainability. First of all, the whole idea of sustainability is creating a sustainable future, not just for ourselves, but for the unborn generation. And we're not just talking as humans, we're also talking about the wider ecosystem that we exist in, because we don't actually exist in a vacuum. We're talking about the air quality, we're talking about the water, we're talking about the biodiversity, we're talking about the other living and non-living materials that we exchange materials with on a daily basis, every second of our lives. To ensure we do this, we need to constantly engage with all these factors and design creative ways to ensure that we are coming up with ideas and solutions that does not only make our lives better, but make the life of the unborn generation better. But this can be a very tasking exercise. It can be a very difficult narrative at the board level, at the classroom level, at the client level, and in different facets of our operations. And tax experts and sustainability experts would understand this. Sometimes it could be quite very challenging for us to be able to pass this message across to another person who hasn't got the same idea as us. So it could be very challenging for us to say, this is what we need to do. Sometimes it looks expensive, sometimes it looks difficult, sometimes it looks challenging or not cost effective. But always, we know there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to start with my very good friend, Mr. Emmanuel Etadehi of FMDQ FC4S. How can the sustainable agenda be innovatively and credibly promoted to an audience that do not have a sound understanding of what you think the concept is?
Thank you very much, Bankole. For starters, at the Financial Center for Sustainability in Lagos, where I work as the Executive Secretary, our goal is to start with, first of all, ensuring that people are familiar with the language of the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And there is a 17-point agenda in the whole concept of sustainability that the world is promoting. We want to get that language into business, into academia, into private sector, into government. That is why last year we did a webinar just promoting the use of the SDG language in partnership with PwC, led by Dr. Andrew Nevin and other experts from around the world. And that is the first step. I think getting people to understand the 17 SDGs and why it is important to them personally, important to their way of life, their way of thinking, and how they consider the future, how they live their lives, getting institutions to imbibe this into their processes, to think in a sustainable way. We live as human beings in a short-term way, particularly this part of the world. We are a people that is always concerned with getting our results now. Everything we want is now. It's so bad that in my language, Delta, where I come from, they say they want this na, 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 na. They emphasize it now 4 times. It means give it to me now. So we don't think about tomorrow. And that is the challenge we face. That is why we'll build a 21-story building without considering the impact and to collapse in our faces. And when I was talking to the Institute of Quantitative Surveyors, I told them the responsibility is on them to think sustainably. If you live in the UK, there are buildings that are 1,000 years old, 400 years old, 200 years old. In the UK where you live, Bankole, I'm not lying this afternoon.
That's true.
But our buildings in Lagos don't even last until they are finalized. In the process of constructing them, they collapse. So thinking long-term is very good. Thinking the SDGs, introducing the SDGs to everybody from the primary school level up to university level, all across the corporate sector, government sector, that is a good way of, doing it. And using graphics, infographics, using hackathons like what we did with Uchi here in March and April, with the Vice President's office supporting us and Access Bank financing it, and with the technical team from NCIC supporting us. Using different measures, conferences, publications, write-ups, ensuring that people become more familiar with these things every day. It's a way to make it, once you get, they say repetition is a law of long and lasting impression. If you keep on repeating it, publicizing it, teaching it, creating awareness, people will then begin to understand it from a personal view, from an official view, and will imbibe it into their way of life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. That is very, very incisive. And I can pick up some very, very, very nice perspective to it. The first one is actually education. We need to educate horizontally and vertically. We need to speak the language. We need to get the people to understand the language, because if they don't understand the language, then it is useless. Then there's also the commitment to time, because time is something that we can never have enough of. But at the same time, we need to think about it. But I'll take up on the concept of timing, and I'm going to go to Ikibi Godson. Short-termism is a barrier to sustainability. Do you have a good example of where organizations in Nigeria or anywhere have managed to overcome the internal pressures of short-term measures in metrics in favor of sustainable innovation? And the perspective to it is this. Oftentimes people say it takes a long time to build this culture, but if you don't start, you don't know. So do you have a good example of how exactly do you think this has actually worked very well? Just shunning short-termism and ensuring that they take a long-term perspective that solves a problem. You need to unmute yourself, Godson.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bankole. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I would say, is short-termism necessarily a negative consequence? I would say no. It depends on what short-termism is meant to achieve, or the purpose of short-termism. Because in society, in the world that we live in, you plan from a short-term approach to a long-term approach. That is how it is. So that is one. Then two, what is innovation in the first place, and what is innovation for sustainability? So it's about building the innovative process to account for environmental, social, and governance issues where you're dealing with organizations, even with the broader society. So in essence, your innovation, you need to integrate environmental, social, and governance process in your innovative process, in the product development, in the market creation, in the way government policies are designed, and the whole macroeconomic thinking. You need to integrate sustainability into that. That is what sustainability innovation is about. So when we look at, for example, let's look at Nigeria, for example. Yes, we're looking at Africa, but let me come from the West. In the 1930s, electric cars were already in the US, even dominating petrol cars. But what happened? Because of the cost of electric cars at that time, batteries, and the cheapness, and then we had Rockefeller coming on board, we had the steam engine, the steam engine coming on board, and because those were cheaper, the world moved towards petrol and the steam engine for petrol cars. But now, because electric cars were expensive, so it wasn't an innovation. But now the cycle is changing, and we are coming to the electric car, but still there's still a challenge, because the incentive is not yet there for us to cascade it to become an innovation that will benefit everybody, but we are getting there. Then let's come to Africa. Let's look at the Promasidor group. When Promasidor came to Nigeria, before Promasidor, milk was sold in sachets, beverages were sold in tins, in cans, and that was expensive for those at the bottom of the pyramid to be able to purchase. It was totally expensive. So what did Promasidor do? The group, as it was owned by British, they went down, developed a model that accounted for the bottom of the pyramid, so they could actually produce for the bottom of the pyramid. So anytime, when I read the book of Professor Jomo on prosperity paradox and how innovation can help African countries, like poor countries, to deploy poverty. I think of those things like Pobasido, Toleram, and even the in Kenya, the model in Kenya for M-Pesa. What those models were for, the innovative models for Africa, meant to address problems that society faced. Like in Kenya, you could imagine what it meant for a Masa cattle area to get his money from the city before M-Pesa. What it meant to send money to the villages in Kenya before M-Pesa. So it addressed a social problem, and that's what innovation is. Innovation is nothing strange. It's nothing anything complex. What innovation is looking at the society and saying, how do I address a problem? We have an environmental problem, for example, in my village or in Nigeria, and I'm an organization that plays a business that plays in the environmental space. What kind of solutions do I need to address that problem in that community or in Nigeria? That is what innovation is about. There's a social problem of hunger, there's poverty. What do I need to do that? If you look at Unilever, for example, Unilever is one company that even before the sustainable development groups, they came up with their sustainable living plans, which address issues around hunger, poverty, nutritional issues from a product perspective. Also, you can even see Access Bank from the product, their financial inclusion product. So when you see what they do in terms of agency banking and all those things, these are innovations which operate. But the biggest challenge of innovation in our society is one, education, and two, policy, the macroeconomic thinking, the incentivization of innovation. It is missing. And once that is missing, there's a problem. So that is where we need to align. We need to align the different innovations, the commercialization of innovation by different organizations to the policy, and to the macro thinking. So why is it, for example, why is CBN not looking at sustainability from a macroeconomic approach, rather from an approach that is essentially narrow? So why is it not at the heart of banking regulation? So those are the kind of things that we need to be looking at before. But in terms of what the banks are doing, or the organizations in Africa, even in Nigeria, like I've mentioned, they're doing quite a lot. They're doing a lot in terms of innovation, financial inclusion, the M-Pesa space, the environmental space, and even the product development from a beverage perspective, trying to solve hunger for the bottom of the pyramid, and even grow. Like Toleram is also driving innovation in terms of the noodles market and creating a value chain, even building a supply chain. They eventually build a supply chain for them to grow. That's an innovation in our context of society. So that's basically what it means. And like in 2009, there was another business review paper that talked about that sustainability is the new driver of innovation. So what we see today is that in as much we have seen innovation from the first industrial revolution, coming down from a Greek revolution, coming down to Schumpeter's conceptualization, even coming down to Christensen's innovative disruption, what we are seeing today is that we are moving capitalism from what it was to a new sphere that takes everybody into account, inclusiveness. Everybody needs to be, and that is what. And any innovation is not account for inclusiveness. It's not aligned to sustainability, and that is what is most important.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Godson. That is quite some narratives out there, and I'll pick on some very good parts that you've actually mentioned. You said it's sustainability only survives on innovation, and without innovation, you can't actually have sustainability. And one area that has actually stood out in the whole of this narrative for me is the fact that with not just the advent of the computer, with the advent of the internet, artificial intelligence, and computer systems, the world becomes smaller. It looks like the world becomes smaller. The entire globe becomes smaller by the end. The market becomes reachable and more. And I'm going to jump to Uche. I'm going to jump to Uche Kebe of Africa Hacks. At the end of the SG Hackathon earlier this year, you mentioned that the marriage of the children of creators and that of the product and content will generate new forms of revenue and create an influence of capital for those who get in early. And then you also say that, so I want to ask you now, can you provide more detail as to how this can be leveraged to advance the global sustainability agenda? And I'm looking at this from the perspective of the SDGs. And the reason why we're asking this question is mainly because, you see, when you talk about innovation, the modern innovation, one of the biggest modern innovation language is IT. So, Uche, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bankole. So when we think of innovation and SDGs at Africa Hacks, we're thinking about creating opportunities that provide jobs for people, creating opportunities that also allow the creation of new ventures to further provide more jobs, and also creating opportunities for innovating around food security. So those are the pillars that we're working with. And for the last SDG hackathon, what we've been able to do is that in partnership with Access Bank, NCIC, and NCIC and other partners, we've been able to, also FMDQ, we've been able to like bring together youths in Nigeria, have them come up with ideas, and then transform those ideas into companies that some of them are now all incorporated and operational in the country. So what we hope is that these companies will then go further to create new jobs and also help make a difference for the economy. And also thinking further than that, when we look at where the future is going and how an economy can be more sustainable, what we're thinking about now is like Web3, right? Because in my role as the Director of Developer Relations for a San Francisco-based Web3 company, I'm looking at how we can bring more developers, not just developers from the western part of the world, but also developers in Africa to start innovating around new technologies for virtual communities, the metaverse, and things like that. So I think Access Bank also has done an amazing job with the fintech space with their Africa Fintech Foundry. And they've been able to use that medium to really spur the creation of new companies. And I truly hope, what I'm hoping is that that will be taken further into the Web3 space, right? Whereby everyone is thinking about it. It's the hot space right now. And it's a space that there are lots of opportunities, there are lots of money flowing around. And for us to be sustainable, we really need to start looking at the future. And when you look at even the biggest companies in the world, Facebook, Twitter, they've pivoted from just being Web2 companies to being Web3 companies, right? So Facebook is now Meta, they're focusing on the metaverse. Twitter, the CEO just stepped down and he founded a new company. And that's where like sustainability is going, right? We want to also like take advantage of that. And I'm really excited that we're having this conversation and we have like lots of people on this call and also listening that would want to be involved in like the Web3 space and also promoting long-term innovation across the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Uche. Thank you so much. And the part that interests me most is the part where you talk about the migration from when you think a technology is so high end, and then something extraordinary comes on top of it, and then that is continuous innovation. It means that continuous innovation itself is a continuous process. So you never get to the top of it. And like you rightly mentioned, Access Bank is doing a great job of this because they're not just thinking sustainably, they are also creating products fit for purpose to ensure that they can drive the sustainable development goal. And beyond that, they're walking the talk by bringing collaborators like yourself and all of us here to have this conversation. So I'm going to move it one step forward, and I'm going to be asking this question from Cecilia Paul. So, what, in your opinion, Paul, what are the areas that you see as the most exciting sustainability innovation happening, and what is the innovation you are most excited about in the world of sustainable business now? As you know, there are myriad of them happening, and almost everybody is becoming a sustainability expert. What's your perspective?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that question. And I want to continue from where Godson stopped, because you mentioned electric vehicles, and for me, one of the most interesting innovation trends we can see in the world right now is regarding electric vehicles. And for context, the market cap of Tesla is currently $1.1 trillion. If for those of us based in finance, we know that Tesla stock is trading at a P ratio of 355.53 as of today, because I checked that recently. That's about 10 times higher than other automobile companies. So then that begs the question the fundamentals of Tesla are similar to tech companies that Uchibeke talked about, but however, it's an automobile company dwelling in the electric vehicle space. So this shows you that globally, investors have seen Tesla and they've already priced the future earnings of Tesla, and that's why the market cap is so high. And that begs the question that what will be the future of the automobile industry? So it's gearing more and more towards electric vehicles. And in Europe here, right now, diesel engines have been phased out, are being phased out. So in the next 4 or 5 years, it'll be legal for you to buy a car that's purely diesel. You can buy a hybrid engine, but as aware, over the next 10 years, we expect that all the cars will be run with electricity. Now, that's the global context. Now, looking at Nigeria, for instance, we can also see sustainability in the electric vehicle space happening gradually. It's not as fast as we would like it to be, but gradually we're getting there. There's a particular company in Nigeria which I won't mention because, of course, I'm not advertising for them. And this particular fellow, he loves riding bikes. He loves bikes. So he traveled to a particular country in Asia, and I bought an electric bike, but then I brought it to Nigeria and I saw that our roads are not the best. So you had to work on suspension system and the braking system, and it thought that, why don't I start an electric bike company in Nigeria? Now the question is, we want to start an electric vehicle company in Nigeria, but we have challenges with electricity, so it's a challenge for him, but the company is still there and they're struggling to find funding. So I believe that over the next few years in Africa as well, we will catch up, although the pace will still take a whole period of time. But for me, electric vehicles will be number one, and also number two will be renewable energy. I was reading a report by McKinsey and company, and it's projected that by the end of this year, renewable energy would have added 200 gigawatts to the energy capacity of the world, and of course solar and wind leads. And the question I'm always asking myself is, Nigeria has huge renewable energy potential. We're not maximizing it enough, but that's where the world is going. In fact, the European Union has an energy target that by 2030, 40% of its global energy, of its European energy consumption will be from renewable energy. Also, the United States, know what's happening there, where Joe Biden signed the infrastructure bill into law currently. So there's an opportunity for us to innovate in that space in Nigeria. We've started doing it. There are a whole lot of startups in the Nigerian space right now that are innovating in the renewable energy space, looking at solar cities and also looking at wind. So that for me will be number two. Will be renewable energy. And number three will be recycling as well. And I think that's probably the lowest hanging fruit that we can really grab in the sustainability space in Nigeria. And anytime I drive around Lagos, I look at the landfills across Jota and all that, and I go to Ibadan, and I don't see waste, I see energy, And the reality is we're not maybe maximizing it enough. Of course, there are startups in this space like recyclers. There's a particular startup also that recently received funding from the Dutch government. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs funded a Nigerian startup company that works in the recycling space. And I was asking myself a question: that why is it that a startup has not received funding as aware from the Nigerian government? But hopefully that will come gradually. So overall, in the sustainability space, for me, it will be electric vehicles, to be renewable energy, and it will be recycling. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Those are the part of our lives that keeps us moving, isn't it? So you need automobiles to move around. You need energy to survive, and of course, you need renewable energy, and you need to move on. So thank you very much. And in all of this, in the whole of this, one of the things that actually puzzle me is the fact that when we discuss, I'm a safeguard expert, for example, and I look at sustainability from a different perspective, from the service perspective, and ensuring that we create a safe planet, a very workable environment, and win-win to ensure that we have a safe planet, a profitable environment, and then we have win-win for the biodiversity. And this perspective is markedly different from what an entrepreneur would look like when you talk about business. And that takes me to the conversation with Pauline. Pauline, what do you think are the roles, or what do you think, what role do you think innovation play in sustainable society? Because all this that we're talking about, Paul has raised a very interesting conversation around the top areas that he thinks innovation comes in, top exciting innovations. But what role does this really play when you begin to look at it in the bigger society? When you look at our homes, our existence, our businesses, of course, we're in different parts, in different continents of the world at the moment, and then we're all in the same space talking to audiences who are in different parts of the planet as well. What role do you think innovation plays in sustainability? Can you please mute Pauline? Thank you. Pauline, if you can unmute, please. Thank you. Pauline, can you hear us? You need to unmute. Oh, I think technology is not helping us here. Can you hear us?
Hello, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Please go ahead. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
There was a lapse in the fiber. Nigeria needs to do better. Africa needs to do better.
We're working on it. That's why we need innovation. When we innovate to that level, we will step up to that challenge. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
we're working on it.
We can do it. That's why it's called the decade of action, and that's why everybody needs to come on board. And I like, I like what our first panelist said. He said that people need to understand what sustainability is and what innovation is, because the idea, the whole thing is that many people think that innovation is just tech-driven, or innovation has to be about tech, especially, at the grassroots level. And the idea is that we need to go back there and tell people and affirm them, especially if they have an initiative or they're doing something, that you're actually an innovator, because they don't know what it is. Because we need to debunk the whole idea of what is sustainability, what is innovation, and actually affirm people. It's not enough to just teach them the language, but we need to teach them the how. So for example, if somebody's in the food industry, you can tell them, okay, this is what you're actually doing, and it's actually a sustainable practice. Or if you do it differently, it could be sustainable. Because the thing is that, regardless of how much money is poured or how much good conversations we have here, I mean, we're just the 1% maybe that actually care about this, but we cannot, we're not, Jesus, we cannot save the world by ourselves. So the idea is that everybody just needs to, talk about what exactly innovation is, because if we remember how innovation came into Africa, especially in the recent years, was a lot of money poured into tech, and most of these founders were actually white people, right? And that was the saddest thing, because whatever plan they had, if they had a 5-year plan, they left. And why I can speak like that way is because Nairobi was actually known as the innovation hub of Africa a few years ago, and a lot of money was poured. But when we looked at the people who were the faces, a lot of the Africans were used as faces of, okay? So there was a larger than life, Africa is innovating, we had a lot of conferences and we were lauded, because, and sadly, a lot of these organizations have exited, and now people are left like, okay, what's up, what's going on? So the idea is that first and foremost, tech is an enabler, and tech is amazing. I mean, look at us here. How would we have done this? But people need to realize that you can innovate without tech. When we go, when we are at the grassroots, we talk to the woman that, let's say they have 1,000 naira, and like, okay, so you have a family, but you have to eat. So how do you actually be creative about how you use the resource that you have to feed your family? And we hear all sorts of interesting responses, and they'll talk about, I'll get dry fish and I'll get some pepper and, and I have a little bit of flour and my family will eat. And that's amazing. And you actually tell them, you know what, you've innovated, because you could have as well gone and bought bread and cola and your kids would have slept hungry. So we need to affirm the people on the ground, that you're actually innovating. So this is how you scale this up. And there's no sustainable development. There's no sustainable development without the bottom-up approach strategy. Regardless of how much we have good plans, we need to go and affirm these people, we need to go and empower them, we need to have collaborations. You cannot have sustainable development without collaborations. That's why a techie needs to look at the mama on the grassroots and actually say, you know what, you have a great product, and this is what I can do for you to accelerate your progress. And if they do that, then this innovation at the grassroots level gets recognized at the world stage and gets funded, and it actually helps, the people on the grassroots. If we don't have people in the rural areas, we don't eat. I mean, most of us live in concrete jungles. I mean, how are you going to, maybe I should ask Diura, do you have a backyard that you have chicken and vegetables? Probably not. So if we don't do that, we're going to starve, we're going to starve. So we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to go back to the grassroots. We need to affirm them that they are innovators. We need to affirm them that they're actually contributing to the grand scale of things. We need to be humble with our language, but we need to still use those keywords. This is sustainability. This is this pillar. And that's why we formed Become Change Institute, which is Dibadili. Dibadili, D is a Yoruba word, Badili is a Swahili word, because it means that Dibadili, a Yoruba person and somebody from that speaks Swahili come together. And that means that across Africa, we can actually collaborate. Because the other problem that we've seen is people actually importing Western ideas and trying to make them work here. So the idea is that we need to have that peer-to-peer kind of exchange. How do I go to Malawi and see something that works, that just needs to be tweaked a little bit? Sometimes it may not need to be tweaked, because Africans mostly are very uncomplicated people and they just want solutions. So in answer to that, we cannot afford to ignore the people that at the grassroots level. We need to actually get serious about the bottom-up approach, because we've done the top-to-bottom approach for far too long. Here we are, we're actually on the finish line. How many years do we have till 2030? About 8, think about it. Yeah. So for sustainable development to happen, we need to go back there, affirm our people, tell them they're actually innovators, and come with both tech solutions, which can be non-code or coded solutions for them that are easy for them to use. Give them visibility, get them funding. I was actually following live the day before yesterday about financing. These people never get financed because nobody sees them, And I'm sure all of us can attest that at one point or the other, our grandmothers, that is if you were raised in Nigeria, you saw some crazy things that they did in regards to innovation. Innovation is just a solution, How do we make business processes sustainable? So that's just the focus I think we need to have in regards to sustainable development. Let's uncomplicate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pauline, and that's a very great one. In fact, your narrative actually reminds me of the book by Amartya Sen, published in 1999. That's why I said development is actually freedom, because you cannot have development. You cannot define what development will mean in NW10 in London or SE12 in London. It's completely different from what it means when you go to Oshobo or when you go to Kilwa in Tanzania, or when you go to Shagale in Mozambique, or when you are in Gorongosa in somewhere between Kenya and Tanzania border. That's quite interesting. And for me, the whole idea about this is basically putting a face to the whole idea of sustainability and innovation. It's not just about numbers. I've said it a billion times. Sustainability is not about number. Development is not about number. It's about people. It's about their emotion and their social dysfunctionalities that affect them. And on that note, I will take it to another level. And I'm going to be going to Diwara now. Diwara, you are the Executive Director of Tech for Dev. So in your opinion, what are the technological innovations that you think is shaping the future of development in the society? And that question is not a blank question, because what we're looking at basically is that we're saying development is not just about let's grow the GDP. Let's grow the national income. We're talking about the quality of improvement in the qualities of life of the people. So for you, how would you look at it?
Okay, I think I would start out by, I think there was something interesting that Paulina said, which is that innovation is not just about technology. And I do agree with her. And I would see technology innovation basically as, for the layman, right, in no complicated way, as a new way of doing things. Innovation is literally a new way or a new method of doing things. And you see technological innovation as a new way of doing things, just leveraging technology, as simple as that can get. And for me, I mean, Paul and Uchi had also mentioned, they talked a bit about some technology innovation that I find very exciting. I'll just zoom in on some of those components. I think the first one will be thinking about new technology areas in terms of things like the blockchain or the metaverse. I find the metaverse very interesting because it's just a buzzword for augmented reality and virtual reality. That's literally what it is. And the idea here is just literally being able to communicate or live in a virtual world or a virtual space using AR, VR, as they call it, that's augmented reality and virtual reality devices, right? This allows people to then be able to interact within a virtual space. So you and I, for example, have our avatars within the virtual space. We can have meetings. We can buy land on the virtual space. And I find this very exciting for two reasons. One is that if you're able to have some of these virtual interactions, it means that sort of transforms the way a workplace could be. And in this context, meaning that we can have meetings such as this, right, within the virtual space. It means that people are having virtual interactions. It means you have less cars on the road. It means that you're literally reducing carbon footprint across the world. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, so I read some interesting news, was it a couple of days ago, that someone had bought, or the total amount of land, virtual land that has been bought is about $100 million. And I find that very interesting because, I mean, thinking about buildings as a physical buildings and thinking about actual virtual buildings, there are a lot of environmental concerns, I mean, that you would not have to think about. I think Mr. Emmanuel had mentioned, buildings collapsing and people not doing like enough due diligence when it comes to thinking about environmental sustainability. But well, that doesn't happen in the virtual space because you don't have actual buildings collapsing within the virtual space. So I think that one, new technology areas like the metaverse, I find that very interesting in terms of sustainable development, meaning that we're able to, through the virtual space, be able to actually reduce some level of carbon footprint as the world, as the case may be. So that's the first thing I'll touch on. I think the second thing second sort of like innovation I would touch on will be sort of like renewable or green energy technology. I know that Paul had spoken a bit about electric cars, which I find very interesting. I mean, what might be worthy of note around electric cars is the fact that they are supposed to emit less gases than if you had a regular diesel car or if you had a regular petrol car. So in this context, if it's emitting lesser gases, lesser greenhouse gases, you have a more climate-friendly or environmental-friendly world, as the case may be. I think another component I will touch on is solar power, where I feel like this is sort of a proactive innovation to actively ensure reduction in greenhouse gases, and this is being used across board, like across different industries. An example for me would be within my organization. Typically, what we would have to do if we run trainings is that you actually have to have a laptop or like a device connected actually to electricity. And in this context, we're starting to innovate around or think about how can we, in areas where they don't even have electricity, for example, how are you able to then power devices that people could use to learn? And those are actual thoughts that not just us as an organization is thinking about, but the world is actually starting to think about around ways to, especially when it comes to communities, right, within Africa as a whole. How can you get power to these communities? Innovating in terms of this solar power helps to get electricity to certain communities that need this power to be able to survive or to be able to do business, as the case may be, or be able to learn. The third thing I would say would be some form of reusable energy or technology in this context. And I think about this from perspective of the likes of, I know that everybody heard that, Blue Origin by Jeff Bezos and recently, launched into space. And I think one of the interesting components around organizations like Blue Origin or SpaceX by Elon Musk is the fact that there are reusable components within the launch system, for those rockets. And that in itself is a way of actually, it's an interesting way, because that singular concept has saved NASA millions of dollars just by having reusable components within those launch systems. So that's another example of like technology innovation. The last one, I don't know if I would quite call it a technology innovation, but I think about technology skilling, right, as some form of technology innovation, because think about all those beautiful things: metaverse, blockchain, renewable launch systems, solar power, electric cars. People need to build these sort of like ideas and build these technologies and smart machines. I mean, so investment in the humans who would actually build these critical technologies is also very important in terms of pushing the frontiers of technology innovation that shapes sustainable development in the society.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jura. That's a class act there. Thank you very much, because you've actually rounded it up very nicely, because you cannot just have innovation that is only tech driven. You need to look at the human side of it, and you also need to look at the functionality of how does all this picture come together. Human beings are the center of the universe. So if it doesn't benefit us, in reality, it's not going to be of a lot of benefit to a lot of people. But while we're on the planet, we are graciously visited by one of our very, very great panelists, in the person of Mr. Brighton Kaoma. He's the Global Director at UN Sustainable Development Solution Network. Brighton, you're very welcome. And if you want to introduce yourself in 30 seconds before we jump right into your question session. Thank you. Brighton?
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Bankole. I'm very excited to listen to all the incredible speakers. I think it always gives me huge honor to see fellow Africans doing incredible work and coming in a manner like this to ideate on a future we all want. So I currently work as Global Director for the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network here in New York City. As you can tell from my accent, I'm originally from Zambia. And over the last few years, I've been living and working here, but also pioneering global innovations within the United Nations circles. But also, I'm an entrepreneur myself, so I'm very excited to share specific insights into sustainability.
Thank you very much, Brighton. We should have been neighbors at some point in time. I live a good part of my life in Kafue region, and Lusaka, and going down to Victoria Falls. I spent some very good time there during my doctoral research. So, thank you very much, Brighton. I'm going to jump right into it. So, our panelists have done a great justice to looking at sustainability in different shape or form in terms of the big picture. Let's say in an economic terms, they say that they've looked at it from the macro perspective, and some narrative from Pauline and from Adedira. They've also looked at it from the micro sector, looking at the family perspective, and then the household unit, the business unit, and then the smaller circles unit, and the bottom-up approach, and so on and so forth. But now, in your own opinion, what kind of skill set level and attitude are key to sustainable innovation to be prioritized? So we're looking at it from, okay, so what kind of skills, what kind of attitude, what kind of perspective do we need to take to actually drive this innovation in sustainability?
Thank you so much, Bankole, for that very important question. And I'll look at it from different vantage points. I think the first thing I want to speak about are the competencies. When we speak about the 21st century competencies, what are we speaking about? And UNESCO has really described and given us a roadmap of what are some of the skill sets and competencies we need to develop in the current and next generation of young leaders. And I think something that is very important is the digital literacy. We've spoken a lot about innovation in technology and innovation in general. How do we begin to build a coterie of young people, especially in emerging markets, that have got all the skills necessary for them to be able to compete favorably? I was recently having meetings in Dubai, and one of the things that we were discussing was around how do we make sure that we empower young people, especially on the African continent, with the skills they need to be able to compete favorably. And I think skills in creative thinking, analytical thinking, technological awareness, but also empathy. And for us Africans, I think empathy is something that is built within our DNA. When you're born in a homestead, when you're in a community, you're told to care not only for yourself, but also for the people around you. And that's the African culture that we've grown around. I think the other aspect, which I believe is very important, is the cross-pollination of these innovations and ideas. And I think this was already alluded to earlier. You don't have to look at yourself as being Zambian, Nigerian, South African, or Kenyan. You have to look at yourself as being African, because that's what matters above anything. And if we have to bolster and broker partnerships across regions and countries, having that Africa-wide citizenship and perceiving oneself as an African citizen gives us a very good foundation for us to be able to partner and create alliances. And the SDGs already provide that in SDG 17, partnerships for development, because that's when development begins. I think the other thing I want to speak about, the third thing, is tapping into the indigenous knowledge. And so many times we neglect this element of the innovations which are already happening in communities within indigenous communities, or within people that have been around for some time. So I think it's going to be very critical for us to look at indigenous communities, indigenous rights, and indigenous knowledge to addressing some of the challenges. I think the other thing that I want to speak about, the fourth element, is the unintended consequences of quote-unquote decarbonization. So much is happening. We are seeing electric cars booming. And I believe in the next few years, cars are going to be like elevators. You jump in, you press a button, and it takes you wherever you want to go. We are seeing this level of innovation. We are seeing software is being built. But what are some of the unintended consequences of decarbonization? For example, cobalt mining, which is used in mobile phones, for example, and mobile cars, are mined somewhere. And all of us in this panel understand where all these minerals come from. And we also understand what's happening at the nexus of extraction of minerals and human rights and child labor and the violation of women's rights. So how do we begin to also, even as we think about innovation and technological advancement within the sustainability space, start thinking actively about the unintended consequences of what we are working for, what the West is working for, and what the African continent is working for, and how do we begin to put the interest of the continent first above anything? So I'll stop here and submit all those.
Thank you very much. 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 I can't stop thanking you, Brighton. That's a very fantastic perspective to look at it. And in reality, my area of practice when it comes to sustainability is what they call risk and impact. So yes, it's fantastic for us to have greenhouse gas, fancy emission control, and so on. But I look at the risk in my portfolio, either at the World Bank or Transatlantic Development Limited, where I'm the CEO managing consultants on my team. We look at the risk. And for me, the risk part of sustainability is a huge portfolio, and it's an untapped portfolio. If you ask me, what are the impact of all these beautiful sustainability narratives that we're talking about? What is the impact of cutting down the trees to make furniture? What is the impact of dribbling out the metals to make metal cars? What is the impact of all these things? What is the impact of child labor? What is the impact of gender and sexual exploitation and abuse, gender-based violence? What's the impact of development-induced displacement, loss of livelihoods, and so on and so forth? Those are the areas in which I look at, and it's very interesting that you actually touched on that point, Brighton. And that takes me to my next question with Emmanuel. So when we look at risk and impact and as it affects sustainability, it naturally pushes us to the point of how can we manage this? How can we solve this problem? And then that brings us to the question of regulatory requirements. So I'll quickly want to wrap this up for us in like 30 seconds or 1 minute, if you may, that economic and regulatory policies play a significant role in sustaining the outcomes of innovation. What are the best practices for private sector to collaborate with regulators to champion sustainable innovation? Because sometimes regulators are actually being seen as roadblocks instead of partners towards ensuring a sustainable development. What's your experience about this?
Well, I have a slightly different view, Bankole. Thank you for the question, by the way, is really what they call a context question. It's a tough one, but I have a slightly different view. I think Nigerian regulators and regulators across the world, they are waking up to the challenge, and it's now left for the private sector and the other stakeholders in the space to take advantage of certain regulations that are already in place or that are being pushed. So let me start with, for example, the umbrella body for coordinating the financial services sector where I work. So it's called the Financial Services Regulation Coordinating Committee. It has all the regulatory institutions as part of that committee, including the Central Bank, the Debt Management Office, the Securities and Exchange Commission, etc. Now, they have come up with what they call the Nigeria Sustainable Finance Principles. And this was announced by the Securities and Exchange Commission's Director of Strategy, Dr. Modu Omamegbe, who's a member of my organization, FC4S Lagos. And those principles make it clear how regulated entities can actually ensure that sustainability is promoted in their various activities as corporate organizations, and how you'll be held accountable for what you do. So regulators are not actually working against the success of sustainability and sustainable transformation and development as we see. They're actually working ahead of some of the private sector persons. So, for example, in the banking sector where Access Banks work, where it operates, there's a Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles. But I dare say, and I say this at the risk of losing some of my friends in the banking sector, apart from Access Bank, there are very few other banks championing these Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles. I know, for example, that Sterling Bank is big on solar and renewable energy. I know that Wema is trying on technology, and Stanbic. I mentioned these three banks because they participated in our green tagging project, which we launched last year with the United Nations Environment Program in Geneva. We looked at how banks are lending to low carbon innovative products, and we saw the banks within the economy that are supporting these sort of innovative engagements and projects. So there are policies, there are regulations in place, but the private sector doesn't appear to be taking it as seriously as they should, because, for example, as I started with, the understanding of why we are doing this is not there. Where there's understanding, there's denial. So they say, for example, Africa only generates 4% of greenhouse gases. Why should we, as Nigerian banks, be worrying our heads, breaking our heads about, providing finance to mitigate the impact of climate change? So we have to tell banks who, for example, exist in Lagos, look, if you have funded any investment in real estate in Lekki, in Victoria Island, in Marina, you are exposed to physical risk, because the rise in sea level in Lagos is real. If you lived in VIA, you know that there were times when you had to bail water out of your offices on a Monday morning because it rained over the weekend. If we look at what happens whenever there's flooding in Lagos, everybody's affected, from rich to poor, young to old, across the entire economy. So the private sector institutions are the ones that need to wake up to take advantage of some of these policies, and then begin to scale, support the ideas of young, innovative persons, so that we can, actually achieve the target we've set for ourselves. So, for example, in the last program we did, which you're aware of, we looked at, innovations in the water, sanitation, and hygiene sector. Nigeria is regarded as the worst country in the world in terms of open defecation. So we call together, small, medium-scale enterprises, innovative companies to come and showcase locally made products that can help us to address that challenge. Guess what? The minister was in attendance, and it was amazing how many innovative products smart young Nigerians have developed. So the entrepreneurs are at that low level are ready. They have the idea. The policy is there. So the gap needs to be bridged by private sector institutions, and I'm glad that Access Bank is taking the lead in this. It has an innovation foundry. It supports innovative agendas of different institutions, like what Africa Hacks is doing, what FC4S Lagos is doing. So we need other banks to do what Access Bank is doing. Go there into the market, pick up innovative ideas, fund them to scale. The companies we've created now, Uchi and I, from having the hackathon, they will need money to scale. They will need mentoring. They will need to be trained. So these are ways that private sector can actually collaborate with regulators. Fund the youths. Nigeria has a youth population of, in fact, 76% of our population is aged between 15 years and 40 years. That is an asset. Is greater than oil and gas assets, because these are the guys that will innovate. These are the smart guys. When we did a hackathon, we focused on people aged between 18 and 35. If you put your resources on these guys, they will make Nigeria the forerunner, the best country in the world in terms of innovation. So private sector firms, banks like Access Bank, should get into this space and use the policies already in place, and use institutions like Africa Hacks, like FC4S Lagos, NCIC, and yourself as a smart young man in this space. They should talk to guys like you. In fact, this whole panel is filled with smart young people with enough brain power to cause a change in this country. So the private sector organizations should work with these persons, these institutions, and with these policies in place, and ensure that we are the front of the sustainable innovation and development that we're looking at today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. That's some white paper for the government to pick up from there. And a special thanks to Access Bank for making this happen, because in reality, something happens when we talk. I don't know if people think in the same direction. Something really happens when we talk together, when we think together. And I'm going to take this to Godson, because what Access Bank is doing, a lot of people are not doing, or a lot of organizations are not doing, or they are not seeing. Emmanuel has taken it from the point of knowledge. And this is one of the points that I actually raised when I had a panel at the Access Bank head office on Tuesday, that one of the biggest challenge we have is because we don't know. Because if we know, actually, we will change our attitude. Because one of the things I've learned in my life, as part of my life when I was an academic, is the fact that learning actually creates a permanent change of behavior. Learning creates a permanent change of behavior. You might not know it, but it changes something inside of you intrinsically that helps you to remodel your attitude or your behavior or your reaction towards particular concept. But another perspective is the cost component. Another perspective is cost component, because a lot of people think this is expensive. Why do you have to buy a solution that is sustainable? What's in it for us beyond the optics? It's expensive. It's not cost effective. They look at it like that because they don't have knowledge. So I'm going to take that question with Godson. Godson, you deal with many clients. You deal with from PwC. We work very closely with PwC, by the way, at TDL, and we've been working with PwC for a while, and we know the level of interaction with the private sector, the public sector, and the other organizations in between. So many people think that innovation is costly and may lead to the loss of jobs for people at the lower level of the pyramid. What's your perspective to this? And in the context of the fact that some people don't have knowledge, but some people have knowledge of it, but they still think it's expensive. What do you think about it? Gutsi, do you want to unmute, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I always say is that the action of doing nothing is the action of doing nothing cheaper than the action of addressing the future. So that's the question that we need to ask. Because if you look at the Nigeria, if you speak to the corporate world, CEOs, those at the top level of management, they complain about the products of our universities. So the question now is that if the products of our universities are not ready for work, how do you address the problem? If education for sustainable development is not being achieved, then who are the ones that will be in the workplace to talk about the work? So that becomes a problem. Can Access Bank alone do it? No. If you look at the NSBPS, that's the Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principle, if you understand the history behind that principle and the role of Access Bank, because in 2018, I actually did a review of that principle that was published, a review. So if you understand the role they played in that principle, then you see the journey of that principle today, you find that there's a gap. Why? Because the principle, like I heard Emmanuel talk about the financial, the Nigerian finance, the sustainable finance principles, and the old principles and the old.
I think we lost Emmanuel. Emmanuel, can you hear us?
You meant Godson, please.
Oh, sorry, Godson. I think we lost Godson. Godson, can you hear us? Oh, okay. So while we're waiting for Godson to get reconnected, I'm quickly going to jump on to push the next question to Uchi. Uchi, we have talked about this quite a bit, and we're looking at it from another perspective now, and we're saying we understand why we're doing this. We know the need for us to do this. Can we take it to the next level? What do you think are the core impediments of sustainable innovation in Nigeria?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Bankole. I think one of them is funding, because I mean we have lots of talented youth in the country. There are lots of programs. There's lots of mentorship, and sometimes I feel like we've almost over-mentored people, right? We need to provide, especially the private sector, like Access Bank has been doing, put together more funding into programs that would help amplify the mentorship that's already been done, right? And this is not too expensive when you look at like the impact that it could drive, and also looking at it from like also the impact both short term and long term is not that expensive, and especially when we have multiple partners. So I would say the first one is definitely funding, and the second one is also what Pauline mentioned earlier about like going to the grassroots, right? So lots of programs are focused on like the high level and those that are highly educated. So I agree with Pauline that there's opportunities for us to do more grassroots outreach, and also go to the level of people in the farms and build solutions that scale for these people, right? Because when we look at even the tech solutions currently, the expectation is that people have to be connected to the internet, right? But maybe there's an opportunity for us to start building solutions that connect to people offline, and it's possible to do that, right, via integrations with SMS platforms, IVRO, and things like that. So we can provide banking solution via like those offline contexts, so that someone, for example, in a village in Ahoda, River State, where I'm originally from, can get a loan just by maybe an IVRO system that calls their number, they answer a couple of questions, and based on like the previous sales they've made, they can like get a loan through an agent or something like that. So these are the kind of things that opportunities that are lacking that I think we need to drive. So funding for existing youth to drive the mentorship that they've already gotten, and also investing more in low-tech solutions. And all of us can do this, right? Even the startups are building innovative solutions. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to also build solutions in parallel that talk to the offline context.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Uchi. Thank you very much, Uchi. That's been very, very incisive, because you're looking at it holistically now. To solve the problem, we think there's need for funding. There's need for us to actually look more to the bottom of the pyramid. We need to look at native intelligence to integrate that into tech and into innovative solutions. And ultimately, we need to put a human face to this innovation solution that we are actually talking about. So I'm going to jump to you very quickly, Pauline, as we quickly running through. Pauline, what is your opinion, or how, in your opinion, do you think data can help sustainable innovation? We all know that data is the new oil. Without data, we can hardly make any decision right now in modern economies. How do you think data can help the modern sustainability solutions?
Okay, let's first say that we've come a long way in that nowadays you can just Google up stuff and find data because of open data sources. But I think more needs to be done, because we need to get more real-time data. We need to invest in more real-time data so that we can make real-time decisions. Because any report that was done maybe last year may not be relevant as per today, especially if it's a fast-moving kind of sector or thematic area. So real-time data, we need to invest more in that. And I will also always say that data is as good as its interpreter. So we need to actually invest more into analytics And I think every organization needs a data analyst. And that right there is an opportunity for, for more employment opportunities and economic opportunities, especially for young people who can be early adapters to this. So the other thing is that with data sharing, it means that we're not now replicating efforts, because we find that a lot of people go by emotion, like this is what the people need. And I'll just tell you a story. I don't know if you know about Kibera, which is the biggest, I think, slum after Soweto or something like that. I don't know which. They think they're competing now. And they said that there were more NGOs. It was like 1:1. The ratio of NGO per, was 1:1. And you can imagine the amount of money in dollars that was, poured into this. So the idea is that we need to look at the metrics, and corporates need to look at the metrics that they want to specialize in. So just think about it, like if we all came with the data and then look at the different metrics and everyone just chose whatever metrics they want to focus on, then we'd actually have a lot of progress. Because unfortunately, if you look at the amount of money spent in CSR vis-a-vis impact, sometimes it's quite sad. In public-private partnerships, if you even throw in the development partners, corporates are the ones that hold the money. They're the ones that make the money, and they're the ones that actually should care the most for the people. Because if we don't buy your goods, if you buy toothpaste and we decide to use salt and water, that's a problem for you. So, and it's actually very important for corporates to keep us alive so that we can keep buying, so that they can exist. So once they appreciate that effort, they need to actually look at what do these people need vis-a-vis what do we feel is hype enough for us to invest in. People are still digging wells in this day and age. I think we are way past digging wells. I won't mention this. There's this place in Nigeria, one estate like this, in an apartment block, there are like several wells. Think about what that does to the foundation. That's a really old estate. I won't mention which one, but you can, Please. The idea is that how do we then look at what's the data? How many wells do we have? How many are permissible in this area? How can we collaborate and use the resources that we have so that we don't just deplete or, and also looking at the relationship between the different pillars, because none of it actually works in isolation. So the idea is that corporates need to look at how are we touching not just one, but what is the effect of investing in one particular pillar that actually cascades or touches onto others, So we cannot just say we'll work on water. For what? Why? So the idea is that corporates need to first be in touch with the people that they serve and the people who actually keep them in the business to know what exactly are your needs. And that actually involves investing heavily in asking them, what do you need? What would serve you better? Like I said, if you send me Colgate and I don't have water, I'm not likely to use it because they kind of complement each other. Yeah. So the idea is that some of these people need to look at how, if they think about it that way and think about who's the other person that's doing water, then how can we then do something different in this kind of situation? So that kind of data and its interpretation would actually help us use money more smartly. So I'll just tell, I'm sorry, my Mr. Uchi here, there's no problem of funding in this world. There's actually too much money in this world. And I'll tell you that because I've worked with the USAID funded projects for a very long time and DFID and even government. And I'll tell you, people at the end of a financial year, they are scrambling like, who do we fund? What do we fund? They beg you to take money. So it's not for a lack of money. It's for a lack of information that actually informs where do we take the money. And actually, are people actually trained to know what are the priority areas and why? And to what extent do we fund? There's no point of giving somebody $1 million who has never managed something small. So the idea of data is actually to know where do we invest, not only our monies, but actually other resources. Some people actually need in-kind help and not money, or right. So that kind of data actually just helps us to know who, what, where, to what extent. So corporates need to actually seek out data analysts who are independent to actually give them the right information so they can know where to invest, and also align themselves with government, because as the policy people, government actually has all the information and the data. And the other thing I would say is that whenever you want to work with government, just be humble and use the correct language. When we go there and we don't use sustainability too much, just make it, use context, this is what it is. As I said, as you deal with the corporates may understand the language, but public-private partnerships is a must, because if the development matter keeps on giving people water while there's no food, then it doesn't make sense. If we give you energy and you don't have food, what are you cooking? You'll not cook your children. So the idea is, we cannot work in silos. Let's actually work in collaboration. Let's interpret our data properly. Let's actually be sure about the metrics of the data, because what Ucheme needs is not what Diwura needs. And then if everyone grabs the metrics, then we all, do amazing work and live in a sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pauline. Thank you so much for that contribution. As actually, my knowledge of data is beyond primary. So I love data. I'm a fan of data analysis, data analytics, triangulation, and so on and so forth. And actually, as a sustainable practitioner, I believe that if we do not put data at the heart of our decision making, we're going to be making decisions based on emotions. And as a member of the Data Association of America and as a big data enthusiast, I believe that the moment that we stop making decisions based on data, we're making decisions based on feeling. And oftentimes our feelings are wrong because they're basically not just very factual. Sometimes they are a product of our psychoanalysis, which sometimes are not the reality of what happens out there because of human differences. And we need to look into the data at every point in time to be able to make an informed decision. And you raised a very valid point, Pauline, and that is a question of actually understanding, what do people need? What do people need? A community that needs water oftentimes do not need 100 boreholes. They need one power water source, a strong aquifer that can actually serve the entire community. If you put boreholes everywhere, it will disturb the water table, it will destroy the water table, it will contaminate the water table actually, because the process of drilling, the oils that goes into the ground contaminates the water quality. Eventually, instead of getting water, you're drinking water contaminated with oil. So it's a whole lot of narrative, but thank you so much for that input. So I'll quickly jump to, as we round up, I'm actually enjoying the conversation, by the way, but we need to be conscious of time. And I'll quickly go to Diwura. Now, we've talked about the big picture. We've talked about the smaller pictures. We've talked about the incidences. We've talked about the instances. Now, at the organizational level, what steps do you think organizations need to take toward driving innovative culture, both at the workplace and the communities which they operate? Now, let me give you an example. In some part of my life, many years ago, when I was working in the oil and gas sector, we have very strong health and safety policy. Either you want to climb heights or you want to walk on the floor, whatever you want to do, there's very strong health and safety policy for all that. But in our communities, they fall victim of all these things that we are protected against. As a result, the community do not accept us as their own, and then we learn from that process, and then we change that process. Now, at the organizational level and at the place of work, at the community where the organizations work, what steps do you think organization needs to take to drive innovative solutions and innovative culture?
Okay, thank you, Bankole. That's a very interesting example. And I will pick up from that example. I think one of the challenges that a lot of organizations, when they're dealing with communities, have is sort of like shared meaning, right? Where there's on somewhere making a decision on what the idea of what they think innovation is or what should be done, and this is not cascaded down to the people within the community. And I would think of this in very specific steps. I would think of it, the first thing I would say in terms of, because when I think of building an innovative culture, I believe it's sort of like a step-by-step process. It's not just a one-off thing, you go dump and go. I believe that there's a step-by-step process. And I would say the first thing for me will be, one, defining what your innovation goal is. What is that big dream? What does success mean? And what does success mean across like several stakeholders? Not just thinking about one person, not just thinking about leadership of the organization. For example, the leaders come up and say, oh, this is what I think we should do when it comes to innovation, and that's it. Nobody else is involved. It's bringing the stakeholders together to say, what exactly does this mean for us, right? What is this big innovation goal? What does success mean? And in this context, we'll be making it very specific. Even though you have now you've brought stakeholders together, there's an alignment or shared meaning, is then curating in terms of making specificity around what it is that wants to be achieved. An example will be like, maybe for example, we decide that our big innovation goal is that we want to reduce carbon footprint for the organization, and that's it. And everybody is aligned. The leadership is aligned. If you're an organization, for example, that is working within a community, the community has an understanding of what it means, right, to reduce carbon footprint. Your employees understand what that means. That would be a step one for me, just aligning and defining what that big innovation goal is. I would say the second thing will be then going forward further, rather, to define the processes or steps that would help to achieve this goal or this success that it is that we've now come together as an organization to determine. And this for me is really, the first one is defining is the what, right? This second step for me will be the how. So how do we achieve, this goal that it is that we've come up with? And using that same example of reducing carbon footprint would then be, how exactly as an organization do we reduce carbon footprint within our organization? And then the how would then be it could be something like, we want to operate an hybrid work environment so that we have lesser branches of our organization running all at once. Maybe you want to have lesser, then need to maybe lesser generator operations, or we want to switch to solar energy, for example. That's an option. So that second step is the how. The third step for me will be something around, now that you've defined the how, is then now drilling down into the processes, which is how do we then optimize these processes that we've defined at level 2? And I would say it's more around mapping out like a guiding framework, right? Or metrics to measure success, or measure the sort of like metrics to measure this goal that it is that we've come up with. And in the context of this same example, we'll be thinking of something around, and I know that a number of organizations, when you're thinking around the environmental sustainability, for example, have things, and that's what we see out there, where they say, we want to reduce our carbon footprint by 25% by 2025. And then maybe internally, then they have a drilled down version where they now talk about, we could possibly in this context be leveraging technology. Like Pauline said earlier, you don't necessarily need to use technology, but you could be leveraging technology in this context, right? It could be, you're leveraging technology to, track essential data points and forecasts, for you to be able to reach your goal that it is that you've defined. I would say that the fourth thing in this context would then be communicating this, like you've now broken it down, right? We now have success metrics or metrics for success. Is then breaking down what it is you have into understandable language for each stakeholder. And at this point, I can't overemphasize communication. So communicate over communicate, maybe down some people, just communicate. I would say that the fifth thing would then be sort of like putting some evaluation metrics in place, which is a periodic evaluation. Now we've defined what our success looks like, we've communicated, that we want to evaluate success. Right? In terms of, we put in a framework that then allows us to be able to periodically evaluate how we are doing on this. And I will not call it the last but not the least, but again, will be reorientation at every point in time. You have this goal, you are measuring, you've defined it, you've said how you're going to do it. You have to keep communicating, because people can't hear enough for them to internalize it and for it to be a part of the system. And repeated hearing, repeated doing is eventually what becomes a culture and becomes an innovative culture within an organization or within a community, as the case may be.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deora. At a point, I'm actually beginning to wonder, actually, were you part of the people that wrote the IFC Performance Standard 4, which talks about community and occupational health and community health and safety? That's very fantastic. That's a very good one. Thank you so much. I'm actually enjoying the session. I don't want it to come to an end, but again, we don't want to keep everyone forever. I would, as we round up, I would want to give all our panelists. Unfortunately, we've had some of our panelists drop off technology, I guess. But for the panelists that we have on the table, I want to give you 30 seconds for you to give us what's your final take when you say innovation, sustainability, and society, because we are the center of the universe. If it's not sustainable for us, it's not sustainable for the planet. And if it's not sustainable for us on the planet, then it's not sustainable. Emmanuel, what's your final word?
Thank you very much, Bankole, and thanks to all the guests and the participants. My 30 seconds will go this way. When Daniel Yegin wrote a book about how oil shapes the politics of the world, and he mentioned how oil was discovered and the role of Rockefeller in the development of the oil and gas industry as we know it today in the world. One thing I noted is that Africa is blessed richly with oil. Now the whole innovation story is moving from oil and gas to, renewable energy and mainly solar. Again, Africa is blessed, super blessed with solar potentials. The solar radiation potentials or solar irradiation, as they call it in Nigeria, for example, is such that just 5% of the land available in a state like Adamawa can actually produce 47,000 megawatts of electricity. Wow. Our total need, our total nameplate, in terms of electricity production today as a country, is now to 10,000 megawatts. But we have potential to use just 5% of useful land in one of the northern states to produce 47,000 megawatts. Let's not miss this opportunity. What can get us to that point is innovation. Let's support innovative ideas, support our youths, our smart people. Let both the private sector and the public sector embrace Goal 17 for partnership and collaboration, and ensure that funding, mentorship, guidance is directed at the smart, innovative young people we have in this country. And we are blessed to have the best country, the best family today in terms of brain power in the UK. You know it, they're from Edo State, right? The Mapidon. So we can't waste these potentials. We can't. We're the best. We can't waste it. Everybody, let's put hands to the plow and ensure we remain the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. SDG 17: partnership, partnership, and partnership. I'm going to be following my passion here. I'm a gender specialist, so I'm going to go straight to Pauline. Pauline, your 30 seconds on innovation, sustainability, and society.
Sorry. Hello. So for me, I will just talk about relatability in how we communicate what sustainability is. And when you say all hands on deck, I mean even our children. Because if you're building blocks, if you have missing pieces, it will all fall apart, So we don't want to see all things falling apart after we've built it to a particular place. So let the children, right from the home level, I mean, they cannot be having AC and opening the windows. They cannot be showering for 10 minutes and having the shower run, that kind of thing. So first, building blocks, everybody, all hands on deck. Let's make it relatable. And then let's collaborate, and let's make it a verb. Let's become change, That's what our work focuses in. We teach people how to we first affirm people, you're actually innovating, you're actually contributing in the grand scheme of things. When people feel affirmed, they want to do more. And then show them the relationship, because when somebody just thinks that their efforts are one direction, then they are not as motivated. And then also show people that this is what you're doing and this is what it can lead to, and there's a great person in Europe doing the same thing, so you're a superstar. So affirmation. Africans, I don't know, we were not hugged enough as children. Maybe in some generations we need a lot of affirmation. So let's affirm the people doing the work by our words, by our action, by our funding, by our support. Let's work with the governments. Let's use relatable language. For the corporates, please put your money where it's needed, not where you feel it's needed. Let's be very deliberate and intentional, and let's all be conscious about the sustainability agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline. Again, collaboration, focus, and then taking time to ensure that we go into the details, not just for the optics. Thank you very much. Didiora, 30 seconds. Innovation, sustainability, and society.
Okay, so I know that I can't remember which speaker earlier mentioned that said something around sustainability is the new driver of innovation. I believe very strongly in that. I would also say that technology, as much as I know that Pauline mentioned that innovation and technology is just an enabler, right? And I do agree, but I think that come to stay. in the world, and it is actually powering, or it is the heartbeat of innovation, as the case may be in this context. And I would believe that, I would strongly say that, corporates need to start to think about how to leverage technology to be able to spread, the work that it is that they are doing around any form of sustainability or innovation at the heart of the organization. So I would say think technology when it comes to sustainability. I would also say that technology is not simply just an enabler anymore. It has moved from beyond being an enabler to being a critical part, or being the heart of innovation. And if we're thinking technological innovation around sustainability, then we need to think about how we can use technology to really power, or how we can leverage technology to ensure that we are able to drive sustainable innovations within corporate settings. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adediora. And yes, we need to actually look into the big picture and see how we can actually look all the opportunities available to us to drive innovation in sustainability practice. Uchi, please, let's have your 30 seconds on sustainability, innovation, and society.
Thank you, Bankole. So I'm a huge advocate of how tech can transform lives. And I truly believe that for the youth, we want to continue to provide opportunities for them. And also something that I want to leave us with is that as Africans, we have like lots of cultures that can also be applicable, like even in the metaverse, right? So like some people are exploring how they can bring in funding circle, Ajo or Esusu into like the virtual worlds. So those are the kind of things that we want to like think about. And the next generation, the next generation would bring all of those of our cultures like to new technologies. And I'm really excited about that. So as corporates, we want to continue like supporting innovative programs, especially those that create sustainable impact, because like Pauline said, there's lots of money, but it appears that sometimes some of the funding is going to like programs by people that make the most noise. So let's use data to make decisions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Uchi. As I go to the last but not the least, Godson, I would want to quickly mention that since all of you wants to keep on buying virtual land, I'm going to create a virtual real estate company that's going to aggregate all your buying companies, so I can aggregate that for you. So Godson, your 30 seconds on innovation, sustainability, and society.
So for me, I would start by saying the sustainability innovation is not expensive, because the cost of inaction is incomparable to the cost of action. That is one. Two, sustainability innovation is about the human person. It's about inclusivity. So what matters is that in developing our products, in developing policies, in developing the frameworks, we need to consider the human person, because without the human person, the frameworks, the policy, and everything that we have there has nothing to do. It would come to fruition. So the human person, humanity is important at the center of it. Then education is key. Education for sustainable development is key to drive sustainable innovation. So those for me, and finally the finals at the COP26, the Glasgow Alliance for Net Zero promised, have committed to $130 trillion to invest in decarbonization. This has to do with education. This has to do with product development services and all that, to ensure that the world moves to a decarbonized economy, because it's a transition. We are transitioning from capitalism that exists today to capitalism with sustainability embedded into it. So that's what is happening. So for me, this is what it's about when it comes to sustainable development.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Godson, and thank you very much, everyone and our panelists. We've had an exciting moment, but like every good thing, it has to come to an end. Thank you so much on behalf of the Access Bank Sustainability team, especially Victor Lani, the head of sustainability, Mofi Folua, Suleiman, and everyone that has been part of this exciting experience. We want to send special thanks to Emmanuel, Adediura, Uchi, Pauline, Godson, I think Brighton has not been supported very well today by technology, and then Kaoma as well. Thank you so much for coming. Special thanks to Access Bank for putting this together. The Sustainability Week, creating awareness, and it's not just, you won't understand what you're doing now until when it becomes a part of history, and then we can look back and say, in the year 2021, Access Bank Sustainability Summit created a platform for experts and specialists to come to the table, discuss, have a conversation around what changes the face of sustainability practice, not just in Nigeria, but for the wider Africa. Once again, my name is Dr. Bankole Alibe. I am a social performance expert and ESG professional. I'm a consultant to the World Bank Group, and I'm the managing consultant at Transatlantic Development Limited. On behalf of all of us here on this panel and at Access Bank, we want to say thank you very much, and I hope you had a good time just as we did. We hope to see you soon. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.